The drone came out of nowhere, a black shadow against the morning sky, its rotors humming like mechanical death. Sarah never saw it coming. One moment she was hanging laundry in their backyard, humming softly to herself, and the next, she was lying motionless on the ground, blood pooling beneath her head. The neighborhood watched in horror as the unmanned aircraft disappeared over the rooftops, leaving behind only the echo of its retreat and a woman fighting for her life. But what Marcus discovered in the wreckage would shatter everything he thought. He knew about their picture-perfect community. The Willowbrook HOA wasn't just watching, they were hunting. And now, the morning sun cast long shadows across Willowbrook's pristine streets, where every lawn was measured to regulation height and every mailbox stood at the exact same distance from the curb. Marcus Chen had always found the uniformity suffocating, but Sarah loved it here. She said it made her feel safe, protected by the watchful eyes of their homeowners association and the strict rules that kept chaos at bay. If only she had known how watchful those eyes really were. Marcus was in his home office, reviewing quarterly reports for his consulting firm, when he heard the sound, a low, mechanical whirring that seemed to hang in the air like a wasp trapped in a jar. He glanced up from his laptop, frowning. It was 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, hardly the time for lawn maintenance or construction work. The sound grew louder, more insistent. "Sarah," he called out, but there was no response. She was probably in the backyard, tending to her herb garden or hanging the laundry she'd started earlier. Sarah had this thing about air drying their clothes. Said it made them smell like sunshine and freedom. Marcus had teased her about it, but secretly, he loved coming home to sheets that carried the scent of their perfect suburban life. The whirring stopped abruptly, replaced by a sound that would haunt him for the rest of his life, a wet, sickening crack followed by complete silence. Marcus was on his feet and running before his conscious mind had processed what he'd heard. He burst through the sliding glass door onto their deck, his bare feet slipping on the smooth wooden planks. The sight that greeted him drove the air from his lungs like a physical blow. Sarah lay crumpled on the ground beside their clothesline. Her left arm twisted at an impossible angle, her auburn hair spread like a fan around her head. A dark stain was spreading beneath her, turning the carefully manicured grass into a canvas of horror. 20 feet away, the twisted remains of what looked like a small aircraft lay scattered across their neighbor's fence. "Sarah! Sarah!" Marcus's voice cracked as he dropped to his knees beside her. Her eyes were closed, her face pale as porcelain. He pressed his fingers to her neck, searching desperately for a pulse. "They're weak but steady. Thank God." His hands shook as he dialed 911, his words tumbling over each other in his desperation to make the operator understand. "My wife, she's been hit by some kind of drone, she's unconscious and bleeding, please, you have to hurry." The next 20 minutes blurred together in a haze of sirens and shouting voices. EMTs swarmed their backyard, their professional calm a stark contrast to the chaos in Marcus's mind. He watched helplessly as they stabilized Sarah's neck and loaded her onto a stretcher, her face obscured by an oxygen mask. "Is she going to be okay?" he asked the lead paramedic, a weathered man with kind eyes who'd probably seen too much. "She's stable for now," the man replied, but Marcus caught the concern in his voice. "Head injuries can be tricky. We need to get her to the hospital for a CT scan." As the ambulance pulled away, Marcus turned his attention to the debris scattered across his yard. The crashed object was clearly a drone, a high-end model with multiple rotors and what appeared to be a sophisticated camera system. But this wasn't some kid's toy or a hobbyist's weekend project. This was military-grade equipment. The kind used by law enforcement or surveillance companies. "Quite a mess you've got here." Marcus spun around to find Harold Pemberton, the HOA president, standing at the edge of his property. Harold was a thin man in his 60s, with silver hair and the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. He wore his usual uniform of pressed khakis and a polo shirt, the HOA logo embroidered neatly on the chest. "Harold," Marcus said, his voice strained. "Did you see what happened?" "I heard the commotion, of course." "Terrible thing, really." Harold's gaze swept over the wreckage with what Marcus could only describe as clinical interest. "I assume you'll be cleaning this up promptly. We can't have debris cluttering up the neighborhood." Marcus stared at him in disbelief. "My wife is on her way to the hospital with a head injury, and you're worried about debris?" Now, Harold said, raising his hands in a gesture of false placation. I'm sure Sarah will be fine. She's a tough one. But we do have standards to maintain. The neighborhood watch meeting is tomorrow night, and we can't have new residents thinking we don't take care of our community. Something in Harold's tone made Marcus's skin crawl. There was an undertone of satisfaction, as if he was pleased. About something. New residents. The Kowalski house finally sold, Harold said, gesturing toward the end of the street. Young couple with 2 small children. They'll be moving in next week. He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. I trust this little incident won't discourage them from embracing our community values. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What are you implying? Nothing at all, Harold replied smoothly. Just that accidents happen, especially when people don't follow the rules. Speaking of which, I noticed Sarah was hanging laundry outside this morning. Section 4.7 of the HOA covenant clearly states that laundry lines must be screened from public view. I'm sure it was just an oversight. The words hit Marcus like a slap. Are you seriously citing HOA regulations while my wife is in the hospital? I'm simply reminding you that we all have responsibilities to our community, Harold said, his smile never wavering. Now, about this cleanup, get off my property. Marcus's voice was low and dangerous. Now. Harold's smile finally faltered. There's no need for hostility, Marcus. We are all neighbors here. I said get off my property. After Harold left, Marcus stood alone in his backyard, staring at the scattered remains of the drone. Something wasn't right about this whole situation. The way Harold had shown up so quickly, his strange comments about rules and new residents. The clinical way he'd examined the wreckage, it all felt wrong. Marcus knelt beside the largest piece of debris, a section of the drone's body that housed what appeared to be its main processor. The casing was cracked, but the internal components looked intact. He carefully extracted a small memory card from the device, pocketing it before anyone else could see. His phone buzzed with a text from the hospital, Sarah is stable. CT scan. Shows concussion but no skull fracture. She's awake and asking for you. Relief flooded through him, but it was tempered by a growing sense of unease. As he gathered the smaller pieces of the drone, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Etched into the metal housing was a small logo, the same HOA emblem that Harold wore on his shirt. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. The drone that had nearly killed his wife belonged to the Willowbrook Homeowners Association. But why would the HOA be flying surveillance drones over their neighborhood? And why had it malfunctioned so catastrophically? He thought about Harold's comments, the way he'd emphasized rules and community standards. The thinly veiled threats. About new residents and accidents that happened when people didn't follow regulations. A terrible possibility began to form in his mind. What if the crash hadn't been an accident at all? Marcus pulled out his phone and called his brother Danny, a former military intelligence officer who now worked in private security. Danny. It's Marcus. I need a favor. Can you analyze some data from a drone that crashed in my backyard? Sure, but why would you? It hit Sarah. She's in the hospital with a concussion. Danny's voice immediately turned serious. Jesus, Marcus. Is she okay? She's stable, but Danny, I think this was intentional. The drone belongs to my HOA, and their president showed up right after the crash acting like he knew it was going to happen. That's a serious accusation, brother. You sure about this? Marcus looked at the memory card in his hand, then at the bloodstain on his grass where his wife had fallen. I'm sure. Can you help me or not? Send me everything you've got. If someone targeted Sarah, we're going to find out who and why. As Marcus hung up, he noticed movement in the window of the house across the street. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman who lived alone, was watching him through her curtains. When their eyes met, she quickly looked away, but not before Marcus caught the expression on her face, fear. He walked to the edge of his property, scanning the other houses on the street. In nearly every window, he could see the subtle signs of observation, curtains slightly parted, shadows moving behind glass, the occasional glint of something that might be binoculars or a camera lens. The entire neighborhood was watching him. Marcus felt the weight of their collective gaze, and for the first time since moving to Willowbrook, he understood what Sarah had been trying to tell him about feeling safe here. She hadn't felt safe because of the rules and regulations, she'd felt safe because she didn't know what was really happening behind. Marcus grabbed his phone from the ground and sprinted toward his house, the mechanical whirring behind him growing closer with each step. He burst through the sliding door and slammed it shut, his heart hammering against his ribs. Through the glass, he could see the drone hovering just above his deck, its camera lens trained on him like a predator's eye. The device was larger than the one that had crashed, with 6 rotors and what appeared to be additional equipment mounted beneath its body. As Marcus watched, a small panel opened on its underside, revealing something that made his blood freeze, a nozzle that looked suspiciously like a delivery system. His phone buzzed with Danny's voice. Marcus? Marcus, are you there? I'm here, Marcus whispered, keeping his eyes on the drone. There's another one outside my house. Listen to me carefully. Do not go outside. Do not open any windows. These drones have been modified with chemical delivery systems. They can deploy tear gas, pepper spray, or worse. Jesus Christ, Danny. What kind of neighborhood did we move into? The kind where people disappear when they don't follow the rules. I've been digging into Willowbrook's history while you were running. 3 families have moved away suddenly. In the past 2 years, all after conflicts with the HOA. But here's the thing, none of them actually moved. Their houses were sold, their belongings cleared out, but there's no record of them purchasing new properties or even existing after they left Willowbrook. Marcus sank into his kitchen chair, the weight of Danny's words settling over him like a suffocating blanket. You think they are dead? I think they are gone, and I think you and Sarah are next if we don't figure out how to stop this. The drone outside suddenly rose higher, disappearing over the roofline. Marcus felt a momentary relief until he heard the sound of multiple aircraft approaching from different directions. He moved to the front window and peered through the blinds. 3 drones were converging on his house, their black bodies cutting through the morning air like mechanical vultures. They are surrounding the house, he told Danny. Okay, we need to get you out of there. But first, I need you to find your circuit breaker and kill the power to your house. Why? Because these drones are linked to a central control system. And they are probably using your smart home devices to monitor you. Kill the power, and you'll blind them temporarily. Marcus found the circuit breaker in his garage and flipped the main switch. The house went dark, the subtle hum of electronics falling silent. Outside, he could hear the drones repositioning themselves, their flight patterns becoming more erratic. Good, Danny said. Now, you need to get to your car without being seen. Is there another way out of the house? The basement has a door that leads to the side yard. But my car is in the driveway, they'll see me before I can reach it. Not your car. Too traceable. You need to get to Mrs. Patterson's house across the street. She's been watching you, which means she knows something about what's happening. Marcus thought about the fear he'd seen in the elderly woman's eyes. How do you know about Mrs. Patterson? Because I've been monitoring the local police scanner. 15 minutes ago, she called 911 to report suspicious activity in the neighborhood. The dispatcher told her to stay inside and keep her doors locked. But here's the interesting part, the call was immediately flagged and transferred to a private security company, not the police. The HOA has its own security company. More than that. I traced the company's ownership through 3 shell corporations. It's owned by a consortium of current and former HOA board members. They are not just running a neighborhood watch, they are running a private military operation. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The perfect lawns, the identical mailboxes, the obsessive attention to detail. It wasn't about property values or community standards. It was about control. Total, absolute control over every aspect of their residents' lives. Marcus, you need to move. Now. The longer you stay in that house, the more time they have to bring in additional resources. Marcus crept to the basement door, his hand trembling as he turned the handle. The door opened onto a narrow walkway between his house and the neighbor's fence. He could hear the drones overhead, their rotors creating a constant mechanical thunder that seemed to shake the very foundations of the neighborhood. He made his way along the fence line, staying low and moving as quietly as possible. When he reached the front corner of his property, he peered around the edge of the house. Mrs. Patterson's front door was about 50 feet away, but the space between was completely open. If the drone spotted him, he'd be trapped in the middle of the street with nowhere to run. "Danny, I can see her house, but I can't make it without being seen." "Yes, you can. Look up." Marcus tilted his head back and saw them, dark storm clouds rolling in from the west, their shadows beginning to darken the street. As he watched, the first drops of rain began to fall, and the drone's flight patterns became noticeably less stable. "Rain interferes with their optical systems," Danny explained. "You've got maybe a 5-minute window before they compensate. Go now." Marcus sprinted across the street, his feet pounding against the asphalt as the rain intensified. He could hear the drones above him, their mechanical whining growing more agitated as they struggled to maintain their positions in the increasingly turbulent air. He reached Mrs. Patterson's front door and hammered on it with his fist. "Mrs. Patterson. It's Marcus Chen from across the street. I need help." The door opened a crack, revealing a single frightened eye. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "They are watching. They are always watching." "I know," Marcus said urgently. "My wife is in the hospital. The HOA tried to kill her with one of their drones. I need to know what you know about what's happening here." The eye widened, and after a moment's hesitation, Mrs. Patterson opened the door fully. She was a small woman in her 70s, with silver hair and hands that shook with either age or fear. "Come in, quickly." Marcus stepped inside, and she immediately locked the door behind him, engaging multiple deadbolts and a chain. The house was dark, with heavy curtains drawn across every window. But what caught Marcus's attention were the walls. They were covered with photographs, documents, and what appeared to be surveillance equipment. "My God," he breathed. "How long has this been going on?" 3 years, Mrs. Patterson said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ever since Harold Pemberton became HOA president. At first, it was just the usual neighborhood watch stuff, keeping an eye on suspicious activity, making sure people followed the rules. But then the cameras went up." She led him to a wall covered with photographs of various houses in the neighborhood. Each photo showed small, nearly invisible cameras mounted on utility poles, hidden in decorative planters, or disguised as security lights. "There's one on every corner," she continued. "They can see everything, who comes and goes, what time people leave for work, when they have visitors." But the cameras were just the beginning. "What about the drones?" "Those started last year. They said it was for aerial inspections, making sure roofs were in good condition and yards were properly maintained. But I knew better. I've been watching them, recording their flight patterns, documenting when they hover over specific houses." She pulled out a thick folder filled with handwritten notes and printed photographs. "Every family that's had problems with the HOA has been targeted. The Johnsons, they complained about the monthly fees being raised. The Martinezes, they refused to replace their front door when Harold said it wasn't the right color. The Cohens, they tried to organize a petition to remove Harold from the board." Marcus flipped through the photos, his stomach churning. Each image showed drones hovering over houses, their cameras pointed down at windows and yards. But the most disturbing photos were the ones showing the drones at night, using what appeared to be thermal imaging to monitor the activities inside people's homes. "Where are these families now?" "Gone," Mrs. Patterson said simply. One by one, they all received letters from the HOA citing various violations. Fines that escalated into liens, legal threats, harassment. And then, when they wouldn't submit, the accidents started. Accidents. The Johnsons' car crashed into a tree on their way to work. Brake failure, the police said. The Martinez's house caught fire, faulty wiring, according to the investigation. The Cohen's teenage daughter was found unconscious in the school parking lot. Drug overdose, they claimed, though she'd never used drugs in her life. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Danny, "Get her to show you everything. This is bigger than we thought. Mrs. Patterson, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Do you think Harold Pemberton is capable of murder?" The old woman's face crumpled and she began to cry. "I don't think," she whispered. "Oh no. My husband died last year. The official cause was a heart attack, but he was healthy, strong. The night before he died, he told me he'd figured out what Harold was really doing. He'd been tracking the drone's flight patterns and he'd discovered they were equipped with more than just cameras. What did he find? Chemical dispensers. The drones could release substances into the air, odorless, tasteless compounds that could cause anything from mild illness to cardiac arrest. My husband was going to expose everything, but he died before he could." Marcus felt the pieces clicking in. Marcus emerged from the storm drain into the pre-dawn darkness of Maple Street, 3 blocks from the nightmare that Willowbrook had become. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick with humidity and the smell of wet asphalt. Behind him, he could see the glow of emergency lights and hear the distant sound of sirens, the official story being written in real time. He pulled out his phone and called Danny, his voice hoarse from crawling through the tunnel. "I'm out. But they got Mrs. Patterson." "Oh no. I've been monitoring their communications. They are reporting a gas leak explosion. 1 casualty, elderly woman overcome by fumes before she could evacuate. They are calling it a tragic accident." Marcus's hands clenched into fists. "She sacrificed herself to get me out. She had everything, Danny. Years of evidence, recordings, documentation of every family they've eliminated. Did you bring any of it with you?" Marcus looked at the waterlogged boxes beside him. "Some. Maybe enough." He paused, listening to the sounds of the night. "Danny, I need you to contact Sarah's doctor. Tell them to move her to a different hospital under an assumed name. If the HOA thinks I'm dead, they might try to finish what they started. Already done. She's been transferred to St. Mary's under the name Jennifer Walsh. I've got private security watching her room." "Good. Now I need you to help me disappear for a while. Can you set up a safe house?" "Marcus, what are you planning?" "I'm planning to tear Harold Pemberton's world apart piece by piece. But first, I need to understand exactly what we are dealing with. Mrs. Patterson mentioned that other people have tried to expose the HOA. Maybe some of them are still alive. That's a dangerous assumption. It's the only assumption that keeps me sane. Because if I'm the only one left who knows the truth, then Sarah and I are already dead." Danny was quiet for a moment. "There's a motel on Highway 52, about 20 miles south. The Sunset Inn. Asked for room 237. It's a safe house I use for clients who need to disappear for a while. I'll meet you there in 2 hours." Marcus gathered the evidence boxes and began walking toward the highway. The weight of the documents seemed to grow heavier with each step, as if the truth itself was trying to pull him back into the earth. But he kept moving, driven by the image of Sarah lying unconscious in their backyard and the sound of Mrs. Patterson's voice telling him to make sure people knew what happened. The Sunset Inn was exactly what Marcus had expected, a rundown motel with peeling paint and a neon sign that flickered between vacancy and no vacancy every few seconds. The desk clerk barely looked up when Marcus asked for room 237, just handed him a key and went back to his magazine. The room was small but clean, with blackout curtains and what appeared to be sophisticated electronic equipment hidden behind fake wall panels. Marcus spread the evidence across the bed and began sorting through it, trying to piece together the full scope of the HOA's operation. What he found made his blood run cold. The documentation went back 5 years, to when Harold Pemberton first ran for HOA president. His campaign had been funded by a consortium of local business leaders who promised to restore order and property values to Willowbrook. But the real money had come from a company called Harmony Security Solutions, which specialized in residential monitoring and behavioral modification. Marcus pulled out his laptop and began researching Harmony Security. The company's website was professionally designed but vague about their actual services. They claimed to provide comprehensive community management solutions and advanced resident monitoring systems. But when Marcus dug deeper, using techniques Danny had taught him, he discovered that Harmony Security was a subsidiary of a larger corporation called Panopticon Holdings. The name sent a chill down his spine. Panopticon, the theoretical prison. Designed by Jeremy Bentham, where inmates could be observed by guards at all times without knowing whether they were being watched. It was the perfect metaphor for what Willowbrook had become. A knock at the door interrupted his research. Marcus tensed, his hand moving to the knife he'd taken from the motel room's small kitchen. But the knock came in a specific pattern: 3. Short, 2 long, 1 short. Danny's signal. "You look like hell," Danny said as he entered the room. He was a tall man in his 40s, with the kind of lean build that came from years of military training. His dark hair was streaked with premature grey, and his eyes held the watchful intensity of someone who'd seen too much combat. "I feel like hell," Marcus replied. "But I'm alive, which is more than I can say for Mrs. Patterson." Danny examined the evidence spread across the bed, his expression growing grimmer with each document he read. "This is bigger than we thought. Harmony Security isn't just running surveillance on one neighborhood. They have contracts with HOAs in 12 different states. 12 states? Maybe more. I've been doing some digging while you were playing Tunnel Rat. Panopticon Holdings has been quietly buying up property management companies, security firms, and even some local police departments. They are building a network of controlled communities where they can experiment with social engineering techniques." Marcus felt the room spinning around him. Social engineering. Behavior modification through environmental control. They create perfect communities where every aspect of residents' lives is monitored and regulated. Then they study how people respond to different types of pressure, fines, surveillance, social isolation, physical intimidation. It's like a massive psychological experiment. And the people who don't comply become test subjects for more extreme measures. The families that moved away from Willowbrook weren't killed, Marcus. They were relocated to other facilities for further study. The implications hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. They are still alive. Some of them. I've been tracking financial records, and there are payments being made to what appear to be private medical facilities. Facilities that don't officially exist. Marcus grabbed Danny's arm. "We have to find them. If we can get them to testify about what happened, slow down. First, we need to make sure you and Sarah are safe. Then we can think about mounting a rescue operation. Sarah's not safe as long as these people are operating. Neither is anyone else who might cross them in the future." Danny pulled out his phone and showed Marcus a news article. "Look at this. It went live an hour ago." The headline read, "Gas leak explosion rocks suburban neighborhood." The article described how a faulty gas line had caused an explosion that destroyed one home and forced the evacuation of the entire block. It mentioned that one elderly resident had died from gas inhalation and that several others had been hospitalized for exposure. "They are saying you and Sarah were among the hospitalized," Danny explained. "Official story is that you're both in critical condition and unable to have visitors, which gives them cover to eliminate us later. They'll say we died from our injuries. Not if we strike first. I've been in contact with some people who might be able to help us. There's a network of former law enforcement and military personnel who've been tracking Panopticon's operations. They call themselves the Oversight Committee." Marcus raised an eyebrow. Oversight Committee. They believe that Panopticon is conducting illegal human experimentation under the guise of community management. They've been trying to gather evidence for years, but they've never had access to documentation like this. Danny gestured to the evidence spread across the bed. "What you've brought out of Willowbrook could be the key to exposing the entire operation. What do they want in return? Your cooperation in a coordinated strike against multiple Panopticon facilities. They are planning to hit 5 locations simultaneously, Willowbrook, plus 4 other communities in different states. The goal is to rescue the missing families and gather enough evidence to bring down the entire network." Marcus looked at the photographs of the missing families, the Johnsons, the Martinezes, the Cohens. People who had simply wanted to live their lives without interference, who had been targeted for elimination because they refused to submit to absolute control. "When do we move?" "Tomorrow night." But Marcus, you need to understand what you're signing up for. These people have killed to protect their secrets. They won't hesitate to kill again. Good, Marcus said, his voice hard as steel. Because I won't hesitate either. They spent the next several hours planning the operation. Danny had blueprints of the Willowbrook Community Center, where the HOA board met and where Harmony Security had established their local operations center. The building was heavily secured, with multiple layers of electronic surveillance and what appeared to be a private security force. The beauty of their system is also its weakness, Danny explained. Everything is centralized, controlled from a single location. If we can take out their command center, we can blind their entire surveillance network. And Harold Pemberton will be at the community center tomorrow night for the monthly board meeting, along with the other key players in the conspiracy. Marcus smiled grimly. Perfect. They can all be in the same place when their world comes crashing down. As they worked, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your wife is awake and asking for you. She's safe, but she remembers everything. She wants to help. Marcus showed the message to Danny, who frowned. I didn't set up any communication with the hospital. This isn't from my people. The Willowbrook Community Center stood like a fortress against the night sky, its modern glass facade reflecting the security lights that bathed the building in harsh white illumination. From their position in the tree line across the street, Marcus could see the silhouettes of armed guards patrolling the perimeter, their movements coordinated and professional. 12 exterior guards, plus whatever's inside, Detective Chen whispered, adjusting her night vision scope. My team has the building surrounded, but we need to time this perfectly. Once we breach, they'll try to activate the chemical release system. Marcus checked his tactical vest and the modified assault rifle Danny had provided. 3 hours ago, he'd been a suburban consultant. Now he was preparing to assault a fortified position to prevent mass murder. The transformation felt surreal. But the weight of the weapon in his hands was very real. What about the residents? Danny asked, scanning the neighborhood through his own scope. Are they all in their homes? Most of them. We've identified 43 houses with active thermal signatures. But Marcus, you need to understand, some of these people are going to fight us. They've been conditioned to see the HOA as their protectors. They'll think we are the threat. Marcus thought about his neighbors, people he'd shared barbecues with, whose children had played in his backyard. They don't know what's been done to them. No. And that makes them dangerous. Chen's voice was grim. The psychological conditioning runs deep. Panopticon has been using subliminal messaging through their cable TV systems, mood-altering compounds in the water supply, even targeted electromagnetic frequencies to influence behavior. Jesus, Danny muttered. No wonder everyone seemed so compliant. Marcus's earpiece crackled with a new voice. Alpha team in position. Beta team ready to breach. Gamma team standing by for evacuation protocol. Copy that, Chen replied. Remember, people, we have 3 objectives: neutralize the chemical threat, secure the command center, and extract the evidence. Secondary objective is to locate and rescue any surviving test subjects. Marcus's heart pounded as he thought about Sarah, still recovering in the hospital under police protection. She'd insisted on giving him a message before he left: bring them home. All of them. Movement in the building, Danny reported. Looks like the board meeting is starting. Through the large windows of the community center's main conference room, Marcus could see Harold Pemberton at the head of a long table, gesturing animatedly to the assembled board members. Even from this distance, Marcus could see the man's cold smile, the same expression he'd worn when he'd threatened Marcus about cleaning up debris while Sarah lay bleeding. I count 8 people in the conference room, Chen said. But according to our intel, there should be 12 board members. The others are probably in the control room, Danny replied. Managing the surveillance network and preparing the chemical deployment. Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. They know you're here. Get out now. He showed the message to Chen, who frowned. Could be a trap. Or could be someone inside trying to help us. Either way, it means we've lost the Element of surprise. Marcus chambered a round in his rifle. We need to move now. Alpha team, you're green for breach. Beta team, secure the perimeter. Gamma team, begin evacuation of the residential area. The night exploded into action. Marcus watched as tactical teams emerged from the shadows, their black uniforms making them nearly invisible against the darkness. Flashbang grenades shattered. The community center's windows and smoke began pouring from the building's ventilation system. Chemical alarm. Chen shouted into a radio. They are trying to release the gas early. Marcus was already running, his training taking over as he sprinted toward the building. Behind him, he could hear the sound of doors being kicked in as the evacuation teams moved through the neighborhood, shouting for residents to leave their homes immediately. The community center's main entrance was chaos. Armed guards were firing from defensive positions while tactical officers advanced through the smoke-filled lobby. Marcus moved along the wall, using the confusion to reach the stairwell that led to the second-floor command center. Marcus, wait. Danny's voice crackled through his earpiece. The building's been rigged with explosives. They are planning to destroy the evidence along with themselves. Then we'd better move fast. Marcus took the stairs 3 at a time, his rifle ready. The second floor was eerily quiet, the only sound the hum of electronic equipment and the distant sound of gunfire from below. He found the command center door and tried the handle, locked, but not reinforced. He kicked it open and was greeted by the sight of 3 technicians frantically working at computer terminals, their faces illuminated by the glow of multiple monitors. One of them reached for a weapon, but Marcus was faster. Don't move, he shouted, training his rifle on the group. Step away from the computers. The technicians raised their hands, but Marcus could see one of them eyeing a red button on the central console. That's the chemical release, isn't it? You're too late. The man said, his voice shaking. The system's already activated. In 15 minutes, everyone in Willowbrook will be dead. Marcus moved to the console, scanning the array of screens. One showed a map of the neighborhood with red dots marking each house. Another displayed a countdown timer, 1423. 1422, 1421. How do I stop it? You can't. The system requires authorization from both the field commander and the project director. And they are both. The technician's words were cut off by an explosion from the first floor. Marcus's earpiece filled with shouting voices and the sound of automatic weapons fire. Marcus, get out of there. Chen's voice was strained. Heralds activated the self-destruct sequence. The whole building's going to blow. Marcus looked at the countdown timer, then at the map showing the locations of his neighbors. 347 people, including children, were about to die unless he could find a way to stop the chemical release. Danny, I need you to get to the basement. Look for a secondary control room or a manual override. Already on it. But Marcus, you need to know, I found something down here. A holding facility. There are people locked in cells. Marcus's heart lurched. The missing families. Some of them. They are alive, but they are in bad shape. Looks like they've been subjected to medical experiments. The countdown continued, 11:47. 11:46, 11:45. Marcus turned to the technicians. There has to be a way to abort the release. Some kind of emergency protocol. There is, one of them said reluctantly. But it requires the project director's biometric signature and voice authorization. Where is the project director? Conference room. But he's not going to help you. Marcus grabbed the technician by the collar. You're going to help me get down there. And you're going to pray that he cooperates. They made their way back to the stairwell, the sound of the battle raging below growing louder with each step. When they reached the first floor, Marcus could see that Chen's team had gained control of most of the building, but the conference room was still held by Harold and his remaining board members. Chen, I need Harold Pemberton alive, Marcus said into his radio. He's the only one who can stop the chemical release. Copy that. But Marcus, the explosives are on a timer. We have maybe 5 minutes before this place goes up. Marcus looked at the countdown on his phone. 8:15. 8:14. 8:13. I'm going in. The conference room doors were barricaded from the inside, but Marcus could hear voices arguing. He motioned for the technician to stay back, then kicked in the door. Harold Pemberton stood at the far end of the room, a pistol in his hand and a smile on his face. 3 other board members cowered behind overturned chairs, their faces pale with terror. Marcus Chen, Harold said pleasantly. I have to admit, I'm impressed. We really didn't expect you to make it this far. Call off the chemical release, Harold. I'm afraid that's not possible. You see, Willowbrook was always meant to be a temporary experiment. We've gathered all the data we need, and now it's time to clean up the loose ends. Marcus raised his rifle. 347 people, Harold. Including children. Acceptable losses in the name of scientific progress. You wouldn't understand. You lack the vision to see the bigger picture. The bigger picture. Marcus's voice was filled with disgust. You're talking about mass murder. I'm talking about evolution. Human society is flawed, chaotic, inefficient. We are creating a better model, communities where every aspect of human behavior can be controlled and optimized. Willowbrook was just the beginning. The countdown continued. 4:32. 4:31 and 4:30. The authorization, Harold. Give it to me now. Or what? You'll kill me. Go ahead. The system is automated. Even if I wanted to stop it, I couldn't. Marcus saw the lie in the man's eyes. You're bluffing. Am I? There's only one way to find out. The building shook as another explosion rocked the structure. Marcus's earpiece crackled with Danny's voice. I found the manual override, but it's locked behind a blast door. I need more time. Time they didn't have. Marcus looked at the countdown. 3:45. 3:44 or 3:43. Harold, I'm going to make you a deal. Give me the authorization code, and I'll let you walk out of here alive. You're hardly in a position to make deals, Marcus. In 3 minutes, you'll be dead along with everyone else in this pathetic